Okay, team, so I'm going to show you a resource that's going to help you to identify and diagnose the fairness of your assessment. And I'm going to show you where in our group session this came from and how to use this resource to help you. So I'm going to share my screen. If you remember, we looked at a particular part of my work with a student in which I asked them to create an essay. From that, they had it peer assessed, and I then had a learning conversation stipulated by the little stamp that said verbal feedback given. And the student that produced the work had to create a mind map around the stamp about their next steps to improve the work. And in the session that we had on Thursday, we talked about how I then diagnosed whether that assessment was fair or not. I gave it a number ranking from 1 to 4, 1 being outstanding, 4 being inadequate, based on the Ofsted rankings. And I explained why I felt it sat in those particular areas. And you had a task to do the same thing, but then investigate why you didn't score higher or why you scored lower, etc. So I've devised a tool to help you with this strategy. So I'm going to show you that tool now. So this diagnostic, as you'll see here, looks at those key bubbles of how to make an assessment fair. And as you get it in its blank state, this is what it will look like. You don't need to touch column A or B. You are focusing on column C, in which you will score using the Ofsted 1 to 4 criteria what your assessment is. So I'm just going to pull this across here and pull out my PowerPoint so I can remember how I scored it. So for reliability, I gave my work, my assessment, a score of 2. For validity, I gave it a 2. For sufficiency, I gave it a 1. For practicality, I gave it a 2. For currency, I gave it a 2. And for authenticity, I gave it a 3. Remember, the lower the score in the score column, the better I think that assessment is. Once I've done that, what you'll see happen is my assessment fairness gives me a percentage. So this assessment is 75% fair. My target of it being good or outstanding is 67%. So all you're doing is inputting the data here, and this resource will output automatically what your assessment fairness is, and then you'll know how that ranks against the target of 67%. So anything over 67% is good to outstanding. Anything below that requires improvement or is inadequate. We can then take this a step further by turning that data into a graph. So all I need to do is highlight the data I want to turn into a graph, and this is where you do look at column A and B. So you're going to highlight the data you need to formulate into a graph, insert that data into a recommended graph. Now, I would recommend a bar chart in this example. It's simple, it's clean, it's easy to recognize. Those of you that are more mathematically minded might spend some time trying to figure out a more exciting graph, but ultimately, I wouldn't waste time doing this where your time could be better spent elsewhere. So I click bar chart. It's going to give me lots of different ways that I can make that look snazzy. I'm just going to go with the simple 2D one. And what this bar chart then tells me is my assessment fairness sits well over the target. Well, actually just over the target, but it sits over the target. So I know that that is a pretty fair, a good outcome for how fair my assessment task is. What I can also look at is where I'm falling short, and obviously we knew from the scoring that would be authenticity. But you'll see that there's a muchness of my scoring here, so that might be something to think about. There's a lot of 2s, and perhaps I want to move these to 1s. How might I go about that? But more interestingly is what I can then do is take this bar chart, copy it, and put it into my essay. By right-clicking and pasting it into my essay, for which I can then that will make the data that I'm trying to present more interesting, more aesthetically pleasing. I might even decide that I want to insert some shapes, for example, this, so that I can stipulate a particular area that I'm looking at. So that it's really clear what particular area I'm looking at. And if you have time, you can make things stand out and look more interesting. While in Word, you can go to Chart Tools and you can make it look more exciting, change the colors, etc., etc. But ultimately, it's about, is the information there and easy to diagnose? So this is the video that helps you with that resource, but you will also notice that I've sent out a blank version of this. And just to remind you, this is what a blank version will look like. You can see as I'm editing this, it's responding to those edits. I'm going to get rid of this because you can put that in. This is ready to go, ready to use. So download it on a computer and use it and input that into your essay. This will go under your conclusion where you're reviewing and identifying areas for improvement regarding your assessment planning and your assessment tasks. So good luck and let me know if you have any issues or any problems.